What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the age-old question, will Astrobot help us get Sly Cooper back? Got to narrow it down. Got to get us straight to Sly Cooper. Now, to level with you, to reason with you, ultimately, number one, actually, it depends fully on the success of Astrobot, right? We've talked about why the game needs to be successful. I think it's going to be successful, and I will concede, I talk about sales, and I mention, does it really matter to me? I want games that I like to do well. I want games that I like to be given a chance to prosper, and I do think that connects here, right? Because does it matter to me? Is it going to change my life if Astrobot sells an extra 100,000 units? Not necessarily. However, the quality of the game, if it's good, of course I want it to do well. And number two, where Astro can lead can be very important to me. Not even just Sly Cooper, but just the kinds of games that might be greenlit by Sony, and Sony might say, oh my God, we can finally do it now because we proved the point, right? Those games might actually have meaning to me. Those games might do something to me. So, if you're wondering, Alex, you're in like a moral conundrum here. Not really. I actually think all things kind of align perfectly here. So, number one, again, it depends on Astrobot doing well. I do think the game's going to do well. I don't think it's all talk. I think the amount of people, the amount of excitement that you see right now is legitimate. It is a game I think many people have been asking for, and it's so different from like the core group that we've been receiving from PlayStation for so long. I do think that's going to show up in sales. Now, does that get you Sly Cooper? Well, in the video where I talked about, the success of Astro, to whittle it down to Sly, when we're going to do that, and also to whittle it down to just that type of game, I think that's what you get. I think it's hard to not get that. Now, we always say, when a game does well or whatever, like a Hogwarts Legacy, right? It sells unbelievable, and it seems like the mindset, the lessons that WB learned from Hogwarts Legacy is this sold incredible. Wouldn't it have done better if it was live service? For whatever reason, sometimes executives don't get the lesson that should be learned. They almost create their own lesson and inject that. That is real. Like, you can't sit here and say that those mistakes don't happen because they do all the time. But I do think it's hard it's hard to make up something with Astro. If Astro is successful, what does it prove? And this is something, we'll kind of rapid fire through, like, what does it literally prove? It proves that games can be made in 3-4 years. Now, yes, Astrobot took a lot from Astro's Playroom. So there are reused assets. If you're going to do Sly, if you're going to do Jak and Daxter, you're starting from scratch. There's no guarantee you can do that in 3 years. Those are all fair things to say. But I do think it's the scale and the way they build it, right? You can have a smaller team. You can take slightly less time, let's say, right? You can make a smaller game. The game doesn't have to be 50 hours. It can be a 10-hour, rock-solid, compact platformer, and people are going to enjoy it, right? Those things are important. I think the structure of how studios are made are important. But you also have the game type, and they kind of are linked. Like it or hate it, you can't use that mentality for a 50-hour open-world game. You can't suddenly say, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut down the team in half. You're going to be given less time to do it, less money, less people. We want that same open-world game. It doesn't work because it's the genre, right? The genre kind of defines almost how you have to make it. So I do think the genre is incredibly important. And what is the genre? Well, it's a platformer. It's a little bit more lighthearted. These Lego Horizons of the world, which is also new, Astrobot of the world, these are one of the only types of games, at least as we see visually right now, right? These are games that work, that could work, I guess, under that system. So how does that get you to Sly? Well, a couple things. You go back and you say, all right, well, what are the types of games we can apply this strategy to? And again, you don't land on 1,000 of them. You don't land on an Uncharted 5 to do the same blueprint that Astrobot did. You just don't. A Sly Cooper is more up the alley, right? It just is. The more lightheartedness, the more kid-like nature of it. We talk about it, and I feel like Sony does hear it, and Sony probably knows it in their own head. Like, the whole idea of, like, mascot things, and, like, you have Nintendo, and nothing's going to top Mario, right? But, like, when you think of PlayStation, it used to be the Crash and Spyros and Sly Coopers of the world, and then it moved to Kratos and Nathan Drake. I guess Sackboy was kind of that Astrobot type thing, along with being the Jak and Daxter and the Sly type thing. But nowadays, it's Aloy, it's Joel and Ellie, it's all this stuff. again, is it important for them to have something like this? I actually think it is. And I think we're seeing that it has a little bit of importance because Astro is going hard. And it feels like Sony is almost kind of like, going off of its back saying, oh man, there's some legitimate hype here. Let's ride it. So I think the idea of having these kind of, again, kid-like, I say that as a 28-year-old that's getting this game, so don't take it to heart, right? An Astrobot, getting a Sly Cooper back to be kind of that mascot. And also, I mean, does it help that like Spyro and Crash, like they're literally bought by the enemy for PlayStation? Now, whether they look at each other that way, but they're bought by Xbox. So now Xbox has the Crash and Spyro. That's just more IPs to add to the collection, where Sony potentially loses it. Bringing back IPs. That's another one. I think one day Sony's going to have to realize that. Now, do I want new things? Of course. I think you have to make new things in order to have them be established. You needed to make Astro originally for him to get to this point. Like, that's the way it is. I think there can be a blend. I think there can be a blend of new IP and also realizing you have a group of games that you've left dormant. Now, there's a lot of them. There is the Jak and Daxter and the Sly Coopers, but for every one of those, you have the Infamous and Resistance and Killzone, and there's probably more of those than there are of these, but that's the line. That's actually, and I'm being honest, right? That's where I actually think Sly has the better chance, because you think about these dormant PlayStation franchises, and I just listed, right? Sly, Jak and Daxter. Those are types of games. And I think those types of games work well with what Astro is doing and also the structure of how they made Astro. You look back to Infamous, you look back to Resistance and Killzone, all PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, so different. And I mean, depending on which one you're looking at, but like Infamous would be an open world game, you know what I mean? And All-Stars is literally a brawler, a fighting game. And it's like, do you know how different it would be to create a team to bring All-Stars back? It would be, I would imagine, a whole lot harder to do it than with Sly. So that's my mentality. Like, is it grasping? Of course it's grasping. Anytime you mention Sly Cooper, you're grasping at straws. But I think if you put everything together, right, almost the ease of, there are some franchises from PlayStation that are easier to bring back than others, and I think Sly is one of them. It might not have the upside. If you bring Infamous back, you have a higher upside, I think, than Sly Cooper. But Sly fits a mold. I think it's still popular, as actually proven just recently with, Sly 1 and all the stuff we've talked about with Sly 1. It's more in line with Astro. It could have a similar development structure. Again, not entirely, because, yeah, you would have to create everything and all that, but it would be a whole lot closer than Resistance or Killzone or something like that, right? I think it makes sense, and I think regardless, and that's why I wanted to make that other video first, which I did. If we get Sly, if we don't get Sly, I think Astro being a successful game that Sony sees as successful, I think it leads to things. I just can't see how it doesn't, because everything makes so much sense. If you can make a lot of money off of a game that takes 3 years versus 6 years, why wouldn't you try it more? If you can make more money that takes 60 people versus 300 people, why wouldn't... Now, I'm not saying fire the 300. Why not try opening up more studios that are 60, 70, 80 people? And these are the things I think could legitimately happen. They just need to be shown that it's profitable, it's able to work. And Astro and even Lego Horizon, almost to like a different extent, those are good examples. If Astro does well, they look at that, and I hope that they take away, or take from it the right lesson. So you let me know what you think in the comments. Don't tell me I'm grasping at straws, because of course I know that, but let me know. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.